Welcome, watchers of this pop-up video that we're doing for Choir Community. And we have in the room Gitika Partington, my co-founder of Choir Community. And we have Frankie Armstrong, who you will discover is a very interesting person in the field of choirs and community choirs particularly, and singing in general, I suppose. But Gitika, I'm going to hand over to you to introduce Frankie because you've met her before, and we'll hear that story, please.
Yes. So Frankie has been a very important, what's the word? Lighter of matches, like fire starter. That's the word. I think fire starter is a good word. Lots of people call her like the mother of community choirs, even though you said yourself, Frankie, that you only ran a couple of choirs. But the story was I worked in a school in Haringey in 1993 to 97. I taught 500 kids a week. It was mental. I mean, honestly, I by the time I got to 1997, I was in a black hole, and someone said, put a penny in the fountain and make a wish. I said, I've got no wishes left. There's absolutely nothing for me. Now, the librarian at the school was called Peter Webb. And Peter Webb is, yes, she's a wonderful singer. And she was in a group called Sisters Unlimited with Sandra Kerr and some other incredible singers. And Peter Webb had seen me sort of falling into this black hole, and I was teaching music, and said, would you like to come and see Sweet Honey in the Rock with me at the Barbican? I'd seen her before because my dad had actually bought me tickets for Sweet Honey in the Rock in the 80s, and they're doing a workshop. And I said, oh yeah, that would be nice. So I dragged myself along on a Saturday to see Sweet Honey in the Rock, did the workshop, and there was a pamphlet type of magazine there of folk stuff. And on the back inside page, there was a little article about Frankie's week-long how to run singing groups in Kinnersley Castle that July in 1997. So I went, go on then. What have I got to lose? Don't know who this is. Don't know anything about it. Sounds great. So I went on this course in Kinnersley Castle, which is a bit like the place where, oops, I just turned my sound down, place where the Addams family might live, because all the floors go in strange creaky ways, don't they? It's really, yeah. And there were about 15 women, and it was remarkable. It was like the most remarkable week of my life so far, because there was no sheet music. We learned lots of things from Frankie. The work went really, really deep, and every night someone would start teaching songs by ear, just like in parts that they'd learned. And Frankie taught us so many amazing techniques and amazing ways of just really getting into a way that anyone could sing, through physical. We did a lot of physical stuff. We did a lot of exercises, and yeah, it was quite a week. And from that point on, I think my life had just been completely transformed, because I learnt by ear as a child singing. So it had taken me back to my childhood, really. And it just took me back to that feeling that you could create an environment where anyone could get their voice back. And I think that's something that Frankie will talk about, that she feels, and we all feel very strongly about, is that everyone has a voice. So that was the thing that really came across. So, and Frankie has been like, at the grande dame is not the right word, but for us, she's been like the most powerful person in our community for giving us the incentive to move forward and do this work through all these years. So I've got so much to thank.
That's amazing. Well, I do actually notice that those workshops at Kinnersley Castle are still going on. There's one this year, is there not?
There is. At the last day of May we start, the 7th of June we end, indeed, at Kinnersley Castle. We take smaller numbers now, and I run it along with Darian, as I did when Gitika did it with me, but also with Sarah Harmon, who is a genuine choir leader. But so, it's, and we have great fun as well as Well, I mean, in a way, Gitika, you haven't left me that much to say. You, you summed it up so
Don't worry.
beautifully.
Right, let's go then.
There's plenty more we can get. I actually want to ask you, first off, do you remember that year, that particular year? I mean, you've done so many years, so can you remember particular years? And
Oh, I remember Gitika very clearly. Yes, and yeah, just how stimulating and questioning and engaged Gitika was.
yeah,
And I seem to remember it was a very good, lively group that year. Well, it always is, but and because Gitika has threaded through my life ever since, again, you know, I can recall that specific year at Kinnersley.
that's wonderful. But I mean, I want to take you further back. I'll take you further back later. But this singing together thing, if you've got a week-long course, that's quite a lot of thought and preparation, and so there's got to be a spark which sparked you to start thinking that you could do that and that it was important for people, because this is what we've all discovered, you know, in our own little pockets, that we've been put in positions where we have to teach singing to people who've never sung before, who didn't think they could sing. But you started it. You were the first. So what was the initial spark that convinced you that this was a thing?
Well, let me first, sorry to correct you,
Oh.
but I was second.
Ah.
But because I came from a folk background and therefore had a repertoire already of songs from different ethnic groups with wonderful harmonies and the like.
Yes.
The other woman, Maggie Nichols, and again, a brilliant singer, but she came from extemporary, contemporary, and jazz and theatre. So she did wonderful workshops too, community workshops for anybody. So it's Maggie and I who are really the godmothers or the grandmothers these days, given our age.
What?
So you've got to take me back really to, I had piano lessons for about a year, but very boring piano lessons. So I decided I'd rather use my pocket money on horse riding lessons.
Yes.
And so it meant that I had the rudiments of music. You know, I could slowly read your Fur Elise. And but when I was 16, my sight started to go and became obviously, you know, very problematic. And I lost my ability to read music. So when I met a group of men at a local youth club when I was 16, who did what we called skiffle in those days, which was American folk songs and blues and some country music, Carter family type songs. And they said, we're looking for a girl singer. I said, me, without hesitation. I loved singing and the idea of being a singer in a skiffle group. So from that, in the early 60s, we morphed, as many people did in that kind of era of 1962 to 63, into singing British songs. The second British folk song revival really got off the ground around then, although it had started earlier than that, particularly by two people who've been key mentors in my life, which is Bert Lloyd, who was the first ethnomusicology teacher in Britain. He set up ethnomusicology in Goldsmiths in London, which was the first community music course as well. So there was Bert, who became a mentor. There was Ewan McCall and Peggy Seeger, who I studied folk song and singing and interpretation and stylistic elements of different singers around the British Isles and Ireland. And I started singing in folk clubs, and I started singing on protests. Particularly, I've always sung for peace groups and anti-war groups and the like. So that started back then. So we're now talking about the mid-1960s. And in the mid-1960s, A.L. Lloyd, Bert Lloyd, as we knew him, brought out albums of recordings of folk music of Bulgaria and Albania, and later other places. And he invited me down to his house and to listen to Sardinian singers, shepherds, and women from different parts of Eastern Europe. So as well as singing British folk songs, which was my repertoire, I also started to listen to other styles of music. And so I started my own voice workshops. I mean, just going, how do they do that? Where do they, what we now call place that sound? I didn't have any language, but I just kind of imitated and tried different pitches and different timbres. And so that's kind of, in a way, where it all started, me in my funny little bed sitting room, but absolutely passionate about music. And I did earn some of my living from that, but I trained and I was working as a part-time as a social worker to make sure I could pay the bed sitting room rent. And so I was already utterly kind of immersed in voices and songs. Oh, and one little incident in 1963 needs to be played into this, which was I was taken along to meet Pete Seeger, who was, of course, the big figure.
Yeah.
For those of us who learned American folk songs, and particularly songs with a social justice and political theme. So I went to Pete Seeger's concert at the Albert Hall. He filled the Albert Hall in 1963 and just got everybody singing. I mean, just being at that, and then going to meet him at a party for him, to greet him and singing for him. I mean, I was already amongst the aristocracy.
Yes, you found yourself in the perfect place to learn from all these icons of
yeah, absolutely.
Ewan McCall,
I mean,
Pete Seeger. I mean, it doesn't get better than that, does it?
No, absolutely. I mean, I was just in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And then, because where do I go to next? I think I go to America. It was Canada. I was invited to go and sing at a folk festival on what was it called? God, I've forgotten the name now. Quite a famous folks outside Toronto.
There's a couple of photos on your website that says this is in Canada. So then maybe it doesn't say where in Canada, but there's.
Right, but that might be it. That was one of the festivals. Joni Mitchell crashed it.
Wow.
She crashed it.
She crashed it. Yeah.
Yes, I didn't meet her, so I'm not really name dropping.
Can't add her. We can't add her to the list.
And there I met a woman who, again, following on from Bert and Ewan and Peggy, became very important, which is Ethel Rame. And she had a group with a name called the Penny Whistlers, which doesn't give you an idea of how they sounded. 5 women, all of Eastern European backgrounds, singing Balkan songs.
Wonderful.
In those extraordinary harmonies and those voices that pinned you to the back of the hall. And I discovered, I went and introduced myself to her and said, I know Bert Lloyd and I've been listening and passionate about this music, you know, since the mid-60s. And to my extraordinary delight and surprise, Ethel said, oh yes, Frankie, I know you. I've got some of your albums.
Brilliant.
So I then found out from her that she ran a lot of workshops at different folk festivals in different places, where she ran regular ones in New York, which whenever I was in New York, I would then go to. We'd find ourselves in other cities at the same time. And again, there was a folk life festival. So it was for musicians, for craft people, for instrument makers, for weavers, just for all kinds of people, as well as singers, for a week in the foothills of the Sierra in California, which was pretty damn good. So, but Ethel would teach there for a week and I'd be a guest there. So I went to Ethel's workshops in this big old kind of converted barn. And there might be 40, 50, 60 of us there. And in the mornings, she'd teach a group of us who were already singers, you know, who were. So we'd have a group of, you know, maybe half a dozen of us learning these songs. And then in the afternoon, she'd teach this much bigger group, many of whom were saying, oh, I can't sing, you know, I'm an instrument maker, or I'm a spinner, or I'm but I can't sing. However, within 2 hours, Ethel had us singing these 3- and 4-part amazing songs from the Eastern Europe, with everybody singing fine. And Ethel what she did was constant support, enthusiasm, encouragement, help. And it was just wonderful. So I went each year, well, from 72, 73, 74, 1975. So I'd got quite a repertoire of Ethel songs by then, having gone to tour in the States each summer. And then some friends from London, from the Singers Club in London, which was Ewan and Peggy's club. And a lot of us knew each other in the folk scene, obviously.
Yeah.
Those heady days, said to me, yeah, Ethel's workshop sounds wonderful. Would you do one for us? We've got a little group and you can invite other friends and other people. And so I asked the publican with the pub where we had the Singers Club on a Saturday, whether I could have it one weekday evening, and he said yes. So we organized that. So there were about 23 people, I think, which included some of my friends, because I'd still done back and forth social work, youth work, teaching assertiveness, all kinds of different things, and action research. I did all kinds of different jobs and worked with drug addicts and ne'er-do-well youngsters. So I had friends from whole different areas of my life. And so about 23 of them came along, some of them very enthusiastic and some going, well, I've never been to anything like this before, but I'll give it a whirl. Yeah. And I had Ethel with her exercises, which were just basically calling kind of, hey, as if you were, I've had a horrible cold, so, but just calling as if you were calling across a mountain, and then doing a kind of wee, well, as if you were calling across a mountain. And so I had Ethel and some of her extra exercises. Oh, and ornament. I haven't mentioned ornamentations. We used to study with Ewan and Peggy how different singers from different cultures ornamented and decorated their melodies. Yes. And so we did, I did that with the Eastern Europeans too, because of course they do lots of wonderful bleats and shakes and slides. And so, yes. So
Fantastic. Well, I've got lots of questions which have come through that. So it's very lovely that you're mentioning other people. You're Maggie Nichols, Ethel Rhyme, Bert Lloyd. People can look up these people and find out more, which is wonderful. But if you got to, when you get a group of people in a room you don't know, okay, say there's a group of, say people have come to a new workshop and you've never met any of them, what's the very first thing you do when you get them in the room? Is it a musical thing or is it not a musical thing? What's the very, very first thing you do?
These days, and I think I've been doing it for a goodly number of years, I tell them about my lack of ability to recognize people. I'm legally registered blind. And that's obviously had a major impact, because much of my life has come to me through my ears. So, yeah, I am part of the oral tradition. I've never learnt songs by seeing the dots. Everything. So I tell them about that. I do my disability awareness so they know. And these days I also have a hearing impairment. So that has to go into the ingredients as well. But, I can usually make people laugh by saying, because my sight's at its best, bottom right, I can recognize dogs, cats and feet better than I can't recognize faces. So anyway, and I like to hear everybody's voice, but obviously if I've got a workshop, a masterclass promised in September with 250 people in it. So I won't be able to hear all their voices, but their names. But I do get them all to call their names after 1, 2, 3. So at least I can say, I've now heard all your names. Well,
after that, what's the next thing you do?
Then I say, I would like to have a few arrangements with you, some agreements. And the first one, and I say, it may sound jokey, but it actually is the most serious thing I ever say to any group. And I'll say this to a group of professional theatre or music, singers or musicians. I will always start with the same thing, which is, please, out of whichever space we're in, can we banish, as far as is humanly possible, such unhelpful words as right, wrong, correct, incorrect, good, bad, nice, nasty. And I simply explain why I think they're unhelpful. Because if you're going around with little wagging fingers going, oh, you didn't get that right, or even, I got that right, I think that's as unhelpful as going, oh, I didn't get that right. Yeah. So just try and get rid of those judgmental polarities and replace them with to respond with whatever comes out of your mouths during the course of this workshop, with words like fascinating or intriguing, or open-ended questions like, oh, how did that happen? Or, oh, why did that happen? Or, how did I make that noise? Yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
That's my first.
And okay, so that's good. And then even then, what I'm trying to get is, what's the first thing you get them to sing, or do you?
Oh no, there'll be a cat yawning, stretching, meowing. There'll be a puppy having splashed around in the sea. They'll come out. I mean, I have various things I do. They might be seaweed, but often it's a puppy who comes and has a really good shake, which means you can get them to wag their tails and wag their ears and generally shake and pant a little. And then I do some grounding, because having been doing my first workshop was 1975. So having been doing this over the whole period with the rise of computers and screens, that, people have forgotten about feet and legs and the earth. So I think it's really important. So I've got a range of grounding exercises, some of which I've got from Darian, my bodywork partner. And again, using a lot of imagination, say leaving the prints of your feet in the sand by the sea where the puppy dog just jumped out of, right? So you're really trying to, I'm doing it under the desk here. I wade round the soles of my feet. So I really feel in touch with the earth.
Well, this is
So
great, because we all know about warm-ups, and we all struggle with them sometimes, and a lot of people are constantly on the lookout for things. But what seems clear, well, you've got
Well,
this.
can I interrupt here? Because I've one of the things I learnt from Frankie, which of course we've all adapted, and that's the beauty of going on a Frankie workshop, is that the space is there to then make it your own and create your own way of running a workshop. And one of the things I always remember is that idea of starting with speech. So you did lots of things that were just really speech that turned into chanting, that turned into something that was a bit like singing. So it was a bit like pulling the carpet from under everyone's feet, because they just thought they were talking, and then suddenly they're singing. So it's like talking in tune, that whole thing about talking in tune.
Absolutely.
And
I was
I
just
love that.
come on to that. So
Yeah.
that's absolute time, just at the right time, because once I've done, grounding and more stretching and shoulders and jaw, it just depends who they are and how long the workshop is. But I've got, after all these years, I've got a fair number of warm-up. I could do warm-ups all day.
Yeah.
I mean, some of my workshops virtually that's what they are. But what I discovered, which is exactly what Gitika is pointing out, is what I discovered I could do is make up language. I can talk in tongues. I just suddenly found I could do it. And if I went to a whole group of people, half of whom would say, I've been told I'm tone deaf, I can't sing. And if I went, Shamanushka Rokabe, they'd copy it.
Yes.
And when you think about that, that's very pitched. It's just not sustained. But, so, Hozamani Karamushka. Well, you could do it. So I just sneak in the held notes.
Yeah, so it's sneaky. It's like, yes, I love that. That's just that was a absolute revelation for me, because I quite often go into primary schools and do workshops with all the teachers, and they are absolutely so frightened that I'm going to make them take their clothes off or sing on their own. I mean, absolutely petrified. And you must have that all the time, both of you. And then by the end, they're just like glowing from every orifice, because and I start very much with that. I do My body lies over the ocean, and I start off, well, I do the talking first, but I just do it like, I was doing like my body lies over the ocean, and then do it as a witch, and then do it as a very, very sad boy. And and it just works, doesn't it? It's just, and it's also about the humor.
If you're not embarrassed about making yourself look daft,
yes, that's very helpful.
Usually just gently bring people with you.
Yeah, it's giving people permission to just be a bit silly, isn't it, as well, and just to be. But if you do it and go, it doesn't matter, then yes, you give people. You're absolutely right, Frankie. I love that. I love that.
That's prepared to be silly, breaking down the inhibitions. It's so important, isn't it, to give people that space and that just permission to sort of get out of themselves, because we're so English, we're so closed in, we're so repressed and sort of like not ready to let go and join in. And I suppose there's that moment here where you have to lead them gently into the place where they can join in and find out that they've got all the skills they need. Of course they can sing, of course they can join in, and everyone has a voice, and that's brilliant. And where the physical thing comes in, it's very important, isn't it? Because that letting go physically I tend to start with sort of, interesting ways of moving our elbows and that sort of thing. Just to sort of get everyone doing something together. It's that
Yeah.
shared thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, here I am in Australia,
Yeah.
and and this is the oldest culture that we know of that's been absolutely continuous in some parts. I mean, so much of the indigenous population has been decimated, but there are still areas where they've maintained the culture, and it's reckoned at least 50,000 years. And you're having been to some of the corroborees, the celebrations of the indigenous people here, it's movement, it's decoration, ochres, face and body painting, it's movement, particularly imitating birds and animals, and voice and chant. They were all of a piece once upon a time. And I think, I know quite a lot of what you might call cultural anthropologists and ethnomusicologists who kind of say, well, once upon a time we could be sure that, everybody sang 50,000 years ago, but it's probably much closer to 100, 200,000 years ago, before we developed language and speech as we understand it now. It must have been gesture, movement, and expressive voice.
And people knew so many songs when there was an oral tradition. I did some research on this in my MA choral education, and it's just like they knew the lineage going back probably to 50,000 years, every one of their ancestors, and had so many songs that they knew, which is, we just don't have that anymore, do we?
I mean, that's why it is kind of, I mean, that kind of sense that we know singing is our birthright. I hate using that kind of Euro approach to saying, no culture has ever been found, discovered. As I say, that's a horrible Europhile way of doing it. But where they didn't sing, where, everybody sang as just as naturally as they spoke.
Because the UK used to be called the Island of Singers in the Victorian times, I believe. It was actually called the Island of
earlier than that. I think, the 18th century. So there was nothing different from us, except we've all got buttoned up and tight-laced in the 1800s, and they invented the notion that singing was an exclusive activity and not an inclusive activity. And that was part.
You were talking about your songs from the Balkans, the ladies that you met.
Penny Whistles.
The Penny Whistlers. And so they would sing European songs and songs from the East, maybe.
Yeah. Yes, they specialized in songs from we called the Balkans, so which included Yugoslavia, now Slovenia, Croatia, Bulgaria, Macedonia, Romania.
We really need to get more of those songs on the Choir Community website. What we do have quite a lot of is songs from the African continent, and I wonder whether when you first heard the wonderful sort of South African sounds, those harmonies, the Ugandan songs, how did they get to your ears? Was there
politics? I mean, the first, I don't know if you've heard of Leon Rosselson and Roy Bailey.
I was going to come on to them later, but go on.
Roy, the late Roy Bailey, and Leon, we're giving him a concert, a tribute concert in July for his 90th birthday. And we started singing a Zikatale, a South African freedom song, as we were a trio. So, my first African songs came through the anti-apartheid movement.
As a lot of them, that's the origin of a lot of the songs that we have. Yes, absolutely. Well, that's wonderful. You mentioned Leon and Roy, and I was going to ask you about them because I saw that you sang with them in a trio. There's a couple of photos on your website, which is fascinating. And Leon is the writer of one of my favorite songs. I won't tell you what it is yet. My question is, and I asked him last year, if I could have permission to arrange it and put it on the site. So I did, and it was actually through a recording from Roy's son that I found out the song. But is there a song that particularly kind of still speaks to you, a special song? I mean, maybe hundreds, maybe we haven't got time to go through them all, but if there was a song which you said, wow, that hit me when I first heard it and I love singing it and I will never tire of singing it or leading it, are there particular songs that have that place in your heart?
Yes. I mean, it's a tricky one, but because of my hearing problems now, I can't really learn new songs
That's fine.
easily.
I know enough.
So I'm often teaching, yes, and there's a beautiful Georgian song. I love Georgian singing, and there's a beautiful healing song, Bartone Bo, which I would never tire of. I'm not sure I can still teach it because of my funny hearing. Yeah, I probably could teach that one.
What's it called again?
There's enough.
What's the name of the song again?
Bartone Bo.
Wow.
I'm seeing a leading Georgian folk song collector and singer and teacher in Melbourne next week on Sunday, next Sunday. So I just love Georgian, ex-Soviet Georgia singing. So that is beautiful. I can send you, because I don't see things written, they just come to me through my ears. So sometimes I know I make 3 words into 1 word or 1 word into 3 words.
Yeah, well, maybe if you can point us towards some places where some of these songs are recorded, if there are some YouTube things or
it's so lovely
Well,
to keep them going, isn't it?
We could get the arrangements on the
well,
site.
it's probably best if I send them to you for you to find, because I can't see screens.
Of course,
so
that would be lovely.
I am really, my level of ignorance is absolutely extraordinary, but obviously I'm quite good at kidding people I know.
You have amassed so much over your so much experience over the years. Don't we talk about polarities, and you mustn't say that, Frankie, because honestly, you have given so much of what you've gleaned over the years from all your the different places you've been. I just think, like I say, I could listen to you all day. And I think one of the things for me that really, in the workshop that I did with you in 1997, was you told us first of all about the fact that you had limited sight, and I think it made the workshop deeper because we didn't have to worry about peripherals of looking at each other and you looking at us and that thing that we do in workshops where we look at everybody and go, oh, I wonder how everybody's doing, oh, I wonder, and actually there was a point in my career when I stopped looking at people's faces and how they were all doing, well, not completely, but and actually more concentrated on the sound and the feel, and it goes so much deeper. It really has a depth to it, Frankie.
I think that is true, and I think because we're also concerned about how we look, and these days I think it's probably something that didn't bother our ancestors to anything like the extent that I mean, people didn't have mirrors for years, for millennia. So that idea of every other shop window you're peeping at yourself in but didn't occur to our ancestors. And as you say, I think it's a different kind of listening that invites you to do. I do recognize, for all its frustrations and sometimes difficulties, being visually impaired actually has some very, very profound advantages as well.
I remember you telling me once a story about how at one point your vision was coming back and you found it incredibly distracting for your life.
After I got some vision back, yes, in 1990, I often had to close my eyes in order to be able to concentrate. I mean, there's so much going on.
Information.
Visual
Yeah.
noise, they talk about visual noise, and there really is a lot
Yes.
of visual noise that actually it's incredibly interesting how all our senses are sort of all sort of linked up, aren't they, in some way? And if you remove
Yeah.
one sense, then, and I can see that Craig's got, like, looking at my senses now, I'm looking at Craig and I know he's got a list of questions and I'm gabbling on. So sorry.
We've gone
We're
down
not
some
going to get all the
different.
questions in, you know. We might have to have
No,
a
no.
part 2 of this one.
No, we're not going to, because we've gone down different areas as I hoped
Yeah.
we would, and it's
Of
been
course we will.
much
Yeah.
more interesting. I want to
Buttery
ask,
biscuit
actually,
face.
your workshops that are happening in May and June, very carefully, beautifully placed, I would say, in the English summer, which is very cunning of you. But are there any more spaces left in those workshops, or are they all sold out? Do you know?
There are spaces in every one of them, to my knowledge, thus far.
Which
I'll
is
be
good.
talking to Sarah tomorrow,
We
but
can follow this up with so much more information. We can follow it up with all your workshops that are happening in the UK and the rest of the world. Of course, you may be going to other places, because we have over 8,000 choir leaders now linked to Choir Community around the
Isn't that
world.
amazing, Frankie? Isn't that
And
incredible?
they, after this, some of them are going to be asking, well, I want to sing some of those Balkan songs. I want to, you know, find out what Frankie does at the beginning of her sessions and get some physicality into my choir. And so the opportunity to come and see you and meet you and be in one of your workshops as a result of this interview is tantalizing and mouthwatering and exciting, and hopefully will happen with some people. So
it does
can you
sound very
please-
exciting.
Doesn't it? I love those words, tantalizing and mouthwatering.
Yes.
Oh, I think
I'm-
you should put that on
I'm-
your
I'm going to look the
photograph,
dates up myself
Frankie.
now and get myself over there.
Mm.
So I wanted to say that the when I saw that you sang with Leon and Roy, and how wonderful that you're giving a 90th birthday party to Leon. Is that going to be a concert, did you say? Is that something we can go to?
Yes.
Would you know where that's happening?
Yes. It's going to be at Quistis Theatre in Ealing
Ealing.
on Sunday the 28th or 29th, whichever the Sunday at the end of July is.
July. Ooh, that's going to be holidays for a lot of people, but it's
It's a good
worth
time,
working,
yeah.
worth working around that.
Need the computer in 10 minutes.
You need the computer in 10 minutes.
Fine.
Very good.
We're nearly
very
done.
Good.
Thank you so much, Darian. And the song that I fell in love with was Cobweb of Dreams. And I don't know whether you know that. Do you know Cobweb of Dreams? Did you sing that with Leon?
He must have done. I mean, I've got all his albums and I sang with him. Well, Leon, Roy and I were together for about 7 or 8 years, but either side, I sang just with Leon. So you'd have to tell me some of the words. I don't always remember titles.
Sing a
these
bit,
days.
Craig. Sing a bit.
I've just gone,
Yes.
and haven't I? And I haven't even got
No,
it
just
ready.
sing it.
I
Sing
know,
it.
but hang
Go
on.
on. He has the most beautiful voice. Craig has got the most beautiful
I'd
voice.
love
So
to
he doesn't
hear.
need to put a little thing
Did
on.
I-
He can just sing it.
I don't even know.
10 minutes,
It's. I'm going to have to edit this because I didn't.
Okay, so I'm going to say something while he's found his music.
say
One of my
something while I find the
highlights of
song.
my life, one of the highlights of my life was Frankie's 60th birthday at Kinnersley. Do you remember? And we had amazing, huge Georgian feast that Ali Burns did all the food
Food.
for. And I remember at one point we all sung, your love is lifting me, keeps on lifting me. And we did a conga that went all the way out of Kinnersley Castle into the dark. There were stars, and we just kept singing this thing. And then we came back, and it was the most joyous evening. It was absolutely joyous.
It was the best birthday party ever. I've had some
Wasn't
good
it?
birthdays,
But that was so
the
stunning.
best ever.
Absolutely stunning. Loved that evening so much. It was absolutely beautiful. A really, really beautiful evening. Yeah, we had some good times at Kinnersley, even with the strange slopey floors and the very coldness. Now I think Craig's found it. Are you gonna have a little sing? Just
No,
sing
I'm not
to
going
us.
to do it live because it's still early morning. but
No.
I found a little recording. Listen to this. I have been searching through the timeless past because of you, my love, because of you. Weaving a cobweb that will hold you fast because of you, my love, because because of you. Oh, sing again the song I heard you singing, the song that sets the bells of heaven ringing, the song that surely told me the grave could never hold me, because of you, my love, because of you.
Oh, beautiful, Craig.
And I want to hear
Oh,
can you sing a little bit of that with me?
You can't sing at the same time on Zoom. It
Oh
doesn't
no, we
work.
can't. Still can't do
oh,
it.
No.
But
Just
I
sing
love
on
to
no.
technology.
recognize that straight away.
Mm.
Frankie,
Isn't that it's
you recognized it straight away.
oh, absolutely. I was mouthing away with
Yeah,
it all
That, yeah.
back to me. Yes. I just forgot the title. No, I
Mm.
love it. He has written some of the most gloriously savage and satirical songs and some of the most tender
Yes, it's
lyrical
quite
songs.
a
And
mix.
he's
Yes, he needs to be championed, absolutely. And well, we still have him, of course. Wonderful. Let's all try and go there.
It's so great to see you, Frankie. It's so great to hear you, Frankie. It's so great to just be in a space with you here. I'm really, really happy that I've had
oh,
this.
thank you. I mean, what is so wonderful about singing is, I have my down days, don't we all?
Yeah.
But that sense, well, because that one evening that I did, I thought was going to be one evening, July 1975, and at the end, people said, "Oh, can we come back next week, Frankie? I feel so much brighter-eyed, bushy-tailed. Let's do it again." And that was how it all started. I thought it was going to be one evening, and here I am. How many years later is that?
And you're still giving that joy, and I think that's the great beauty of what we do is, we, like you say, we have our down days, we have our days when we think, but then you stand in front of a group and you become part of that group, and the group ends up with that joy at the end of it, which is just
Yes.
just so brilliant. And I'm still doing it now, you're still doing it now, Craig, you're still doing it now, Frankie, and it's just a joyous thing, and it's so joyous to spend some time with you, Frankie. And we've probably
We're
almost
so
run out of time.
late.
Yeah, we are. We have to keep reminding ourselves as well, I think, of that, because it's hard work sometimes. And
thank you so much for joining us today. We've hardly touched the surface of what we could have gone into, but it's absolutely fascinating to hear. You've still got the mojo, you've still got that enthusiasm, and you're still giving out the love. And we look forward to seeing you in the UK. We'll come and find you when you're here at some point. Gitika and I think we'll have to meet up at some point.
That would be just lovely. I'd love to meet you in person now, having met you.
Really nice.
But the fact that our listeners or watchers, whoever, if there's anybody out there, also have the chance to now come and experience workshops with you, because you have cleverly given us some in the UK. That's just us. Now, hopefully there's people around the world. You are doing some others as well. What else is coming up for you before you finish? Where else are you going?
Well, I'm going to Belgium, but that's to a conference for arts and drama therapists. That's my 250 people.
Wow.
And then I'm going to Berlin to a theatre school. Darian and I are going and teaching at a physical theatre school in Berlin. But again, I think, so I'm not doing that many public workshops, but maybe we could even set some up together, or
that sounds lovely.
Maybe let's do that. Let's give people the opportunity to write to us, through us to you, to inquire whether you can fit them in. If you give us your schedule, that'd be wonderful. We have choirs in Belgium, we have choirs in Germany, so there may be some people who are going to come and see you anyway. And
wow.
well,
okay, so we're running out of time, aren't we? I know Darian's got another thing, so
Darian has.
You can go to Frankie's website. There's lots of information there. There's photos and films and write-ups of some of the stuff we've been talking about. And we'll have to get you back on after some of this, maybe next year when you've done all the workshops. You can come and tell us all about them.
Yeah.
Lovely, Craig. Well, thank you, and a joy to see you again, Gitika.
Yeah, lovely, lovely.
And hopefully we will meet or see each other again before long.
Brilliant. You
Good. I'm
sleep
gonna-
Thanks.
well.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Like and subscribe.